Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Council and Committee meeting for Tuesday, November 7th. Dean, call to order, please.
Mover and seconder, please.
Betty and Jen.
Moved by Councillor King, second by Councillor Gauthier, that the Council and Committee meeting of November 7th, 2023 be called to order at 5:35.
All in favor? Carried. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bennett.
Present.
Reeve Watt.
Present.
Councillor Gauthier.
Present.
Councillor Hewitt.
Present.
Councillor Hughley.
Present.
Councillor King.
Present.
Councillor Wren. All members present except for Councillor Wren.
Thank you. Approve of the agenda. Keith and Wendy.
Moved by Reeve Watt, second by Councillor Hewitt, that the agenda of the Council and Committee meeting of November 7th, 2023 be approved as presented.
All in favor? Carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. See none. Our first delegation, do we know if Mr. Finnegan is on?
No, I don't believe he is yet, eh? So we'll, maybe we can just get flagged when he is and we'll circle back to him at
Okay.
some. Thank you.
Okay, so down to business. Laurie, report on short-term accommodation, please.
Yes, so council does have before it a copy of a "This is what we heard" report related to the short-term accommodation. So what we did have was a survey set that was put out through Zen City, which is an online engagement platform that the township has been using for a number of survey approaches. And we had two surveys. One was on short-term accommodation generally, and then the second survey was on a draft regulation bylaw and what types of things would like to be seen in that and related to those. We thought it was better to split that into two surveys, so we do have the results that were attached to a subsequent report that was provided to council. And it does set out that generally, in terms of the number of responses, we did have 106, I believe. I'm just going to turn to that. Yes, 106 that completed the survey on short-term accommodation generally, and then another 68, or 68 of those that also completed the survey specifically related to the regulation bylaw. So what we did find was that all of the results are there and available for council on each of the questions. But in terms of the question that was in whether or not people supported short-term accommodation, the majority was that they supported short-term accommodation, but with regulation. And again, there are a number of other kind of questions that we did ask to try to get an idea of who was responding. And we did ask, what people's connections were to short-term accommodation, whether they owned a property where they had short-term accommodation, or whether they had visited a property and used short-term accommodation, or whether they were on a property that was located near another property where short-term accommodation had occurred. So we were getting that sense through the survey as well too, and we did note that even just through people that filled out the survey, that we had 35 that were affirmative that they did operate short-term accommodation, which kind of reaffirms that we do know that it is something that has been occurring within the municipality. So we also did have a number of questions that again where we laid out options to pick from, but we did have sections where people could add additional comments that they wanted to provide. And again, we did see some of the same types of concerns that were being brought forward as to the concerns that were expressed when we had the public meeting with the site-specific zoning bylaw. And again, those themes, follow through with noise, capacity, a number of people on properties, traffic, burning, all of those types of things kind of recurred again and again. Those were items in the draft regulation bylaw as well, that there were strategies put forward to, try to address how that could be, looked at, in addition to the fact that we do also have different bylaws that remain in place in the township related to burning, burning and, apologize, my brain's misfiring for a second here, noise and other types of complaints. So again, I don't know if council wants me to walk through, some of the other kind of opinions that were in that, or if they just like to leave that, that we have that general, this is what we heard survey, available for review. What we do have in a report, that the companion report that goes along with that from myself, just kind of brings back forward what we're looking for direction for the next steps. From this report, we're seeing the direction being that, generally speaking, people were wanting that if we're moving forward with short-term accommodation, that it would be with regulation. So we have a couple of options to consider. If we are moving forward with a short-term accommodation regulation bylaw, then the other question that we do also still have is how council would like to direct us to address it with a zoning bylaw. Currently, our zoning only would permit short-term accommodation types of uses in the tourist commercial zone and recreation commercial zone. We do not have significant lands that would be pre-zoned that. It would be very rare where we have that already pre-zoned. So, the direction could be that if, status quo would be that people could still apply for a site-specific amendment, and council would assess on a case-by-case basis the merits of a particular property and suitability. And then the other, another approach that some other municipalities are also contemplating is opening it up to allow for certain zones and under certain conditions within those zonings to allow for short-term accommodation on some specific areas of their municipalities. Kind of noted that with our adjacent Whitewater region, that they had some discussions about regulation bylaws, then they kind of set that back for a little bit, and they've also then come forward with a new draft comprehensive zoning bylaw that does have general provisions related to short-term accommodation that would allow in a number of zones, and then they're now just kind of discussing taking that and setting that back for a little bit until they actually get the regulation bylaw in place. But it looks like they're probably moving to it more broadly. But when we have other communities within Renfrew County that are sort of sitting back as well, or in other stages of the same kind of process that we're going through as with Greater Madawaska, they are now out with a public survey similar to what, similar questions and similar approach to how Laurentian Valley did. So I'm sure there's lots of food for thought for council on this issue, and it's certainly not an isolated issue to our township. It's a national question. Where it becomes a little bit different is in communities like ours and in different parts of Renfrew County where we have, it's not just about the residential use, it is an area where we do have also that recreation commercial use, and how do you strike that balance?
Okay, I'll open it to the floor. Who wants to start? Brian.
Having read through all the comments and everything in it, the one question I had was with regards to the issue that was raised of private roads. Now, does that ever become an issue when you're for a building permit and zoning, that it's something other than straight residential, or what's the legal side of things with regards to a private road on it?
Yeah, so at this point, what we've done with other rezonings where it's on private road is we have asked for the applicants as well to provide a legal opinion on what their particular right-of-way does entitle them to. But it is definitely a different consideration when we deal with private roads, because every private road has a different type of right-of-way or permissions that may be allowed for there. So that's certainly an extra consideration that they would have to demonstrate that they have that legal right, or they may also have to go negotiate to be able to have that as part of their right-of-way if it's an enhancement of use. So it really becomes a site-specific legal question when it comes to private roads.
Anybody else? Keith?
I think it goes on regardless of what we have in terms of any kind of conditions on these. There's a lot of cottages that are rented on an annual basis, sometimes for several weeks. I think that with what you have provided as far as a lease or whatever, I guess rules concerning short-term stays on site-specific, I think would be the way to go.
Okay, Wendy?
I'm kind of along the same thinking as Keith. I actually stayed in a short-term accommodation when I was at a province just about a month ago and kind of fished around to find out what the rules were. And I was allowed access to the property, which was a private road. And so in that particular area where I was staying, they do have site-specific amendments in that area. So I'm just kind of thinking like we don't really have an area that's a blanket fit. So I kind of feel like we need to go the site-specific amendment route.
Okay. I have an issue with moving forward on this at this time. As mentioned, when this came up before, Alan and I did attend a conference back in the spring, and short-term accommodation was one of the sessions with a couple of municipalities. We could be opening up a ball of worms as far as costs are concerned. I know in Lori's comments here, budget items can be discussed for 2024. How are we going to regulate issues that happens at a short-term accommodation? So you got noise bylaw or whatever. We are now, people call the OPP, so we're paying for that cost already. I know in the municipalities that have taken the step forward, have specific bylaw officers that attend the sites, and I'm sure that a lot of them want the OPP or want their police force along with them, rather than just showing up at a party at 9 or 11 o'clock at night or whatever, which creates more costs. We don't want to go into this incurring taxpayers' dollars to something that's already going on with a few complaints right now. I know there's maybe a dozen or so that I'm aware of. I think we need to look into this more as to if we're going to open it up and we're going to charge license fees. I know in the bigger areas, it's a business today. You know, you've got people paying $1,000, $2,000 to be licensed, and you have that revenue to offset your costs. At this time, we don't know what the costs would be moving forward. I would rather see our partner municipalities work together, and if we want to, everybody moves forward, then possibly someone could be hired to look after the partners that are involved, whether it's Pembroke, Petawawa, Whitewater, Russian Valley, etc., and have a combined effort having this. But I'm really afraid that we're going to get into a jackpot here if we just move forward and start getting people to be licensed, and I'm just not ready for it. I think we need to do more investigation. I know Laurie says that there's a lot of municipalities sitting on the fence. You know, Pembroke and Petawawa, our neighbors, haven't done anything yet that I'm aware of. I know they're all looking at it, but nobody's ready to step forward. So my recommendation is that we get together with other municipalities and see, you know what, if one side of the street, Pembroke's got the rule, and the other side of the street, Russian Valley doesn't, or vice versa with Petawawa, or vice versa with Whitewater, then what do we do? So it's a big issue, and at that conference, finding out what dollars are being spent and how the regulations are formed, it's not as easy just to say, okay, come in and get licensed and you're good to go. Because we're going to get more calls once we say, okay, you pay $500 or $1,000 to be licensed, that means there's probably gonna be a lot more come out of the woodwork and say, hey, what a good idea, I'm gonna be gone for 2 weeks, let's rent my house out. You know, they're gonna be all over the place, and how are we gonna regulate it? Those are my concerns. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on it or whatever. Keith?
In Lori's report, she did mention that, you know, it would be wise to go through, contact that company and see what the costs would be prior to getting into it, and I fully support that part of it, and I do understand what you're saying as well, and I think that would be a big part prior to moving forward, for sure.
Brian?
Did our bylaw enforcement folks not already indicate that this is a service that they would consider providing, and they also do a lot of the other neighboring municipalities as well?
Well, they never really specifically said that one directly, but they would help us with any kind of bylaw, you know, issues if we want to kind of go down that path and explain to them what we're after. I'm sure they would provide some kind of service to us, yes, they probably would.
I think there's certainly options here, and just to put our head in the sand is not maybe the best option, because it is a growing problem, and do you wait until it's out of control, or do you try and get ahead of it?
Right, but if we do get our bylaw enforcers involved, there's a cost. So who's gonna pay that cost? And that's my concern. I don't wanna start having our taxpayers paying for more expenses that we create that don't have the revenue against it, so. I'm not saying to abolish idea, but I think we need to give staff more direction to confirm what other municipalities are doing. Are they interested in banding together? Maybe get some new ideas from them as far as, you know, cost and revenue. Wendy?
I certainly agree, we're not ready to go forward yet at that point, for sure. Maybe this is not an appropriate question, but do you know if there's any other places in the province that have like a county type of model rather than just, you know, a township model for something like this?
No, I think what we saw at the conference, they were big enough municipalities that, you know, population of 50 to 100,000 that could handle that on their own. You know, we need to combine 4 or 5 municipalities to get to 40 or 50,000 people, and to able to afford the cost of the bylaw enforcer or how busy they're gonna be. Again, you gotta remember, we're already paying the OPP. So the first call the neighbor's gonna make is probably the OPP. Because the person that gets the license, okay, they know what the rules are, but maybe the neighbors don't. So at 11 o'clock at night, they're being woken up or whatever, they're gonna call the OPP. So right away, we're paying that cost before we even get the bylaw enforcement. But, Brian?
I just think a lot of the issues that were brought up in this were not even like noise related. They were parking, they were traffic, they were building code issues, fire related, those sorts of things, which I think are valid things that need to be addressed. If, you know, if somebody's renting a place, they want to know that the house is safe, and some of the places where they are, the roads are very narrow, and if somebody's parked an RV or a boat and trailer on the road, and all of a sudden you come down in the middle of the night and there's a trailer sitting there on the road, you know, they need to have a place off the road to do it, and so there need to be some rules set up on all of these things.
Absolutely, and in some of the comments, even using the neighbor's property, you know, using the accessories, the docks, whatever. That's all got to be formulated in it, and I guess that's got to be regulated when the person gets a license, that they have to stay in their own property or whatever. So I just think I appreciate all the work that Laurie's gone into this, but I think there needs to be more done before we go any further.
I would agree that more needs to be done before we go ahead, but I think we need to at least be doing the work.
Well, absolutely, we need to be proactive, absolutely, I agree with you. So maybe we can send it back to Laurie, with maybe some of the comments tonight. If council has any other ideas, whatever, they can send them off to Laurie as to, you know, the next steps from here. Does that work, Laurie?
Yes, and I can just add to, like, we have been, working together with a number of municipalities in Renfrew County, kind of on this working group. So we have been, sharing ideas, and a lot of, again, the same kind of bylaw is what's being considered amongst them all. But certainly, we can go back with another discussion. Most of them, we do use the same bylaw enforcement company as well. So there's certainly, some opportunity to expand those discussions. Just to the other point, though, too, I think one of the things, even if we, and I'm not saying to accelerate this by any means, but if we were to do a licensing bylaw, it still wouldn't necessarily open it up that it'd be permitted anywhere, that's where we still, if you were going to open up where it's permitted, that would have that next other piece of changing the zoning bylaw as well. So there's kind of those two pieces to look at in terms of that approach. And also, certainly anywhere else that we research, the other thing would be a heavy education process too ahead of time that would hopefully get out ahead of trying to divert some of the calls that shouldn't go to the OPP to add costs that way as well. That's certainly everything I've kind of researched with other communities, a strong education program for both sides of that fence is something that's strongly recommended as well.
Laurie, I don't remember, was there a cost revenue chart in here as to what it costs to sign up?
Yeah, so I hadn't included the breakdown, but in the fee that is similar again to what Kawarth Lakes had put in place, looking at some preliminary numbers that have been provided to us from, just one of these types of companies that help to manage calls. So what they would do is they would manage, finding where they are, finding if they're non-compliance in terms of advertisements, like not going on the ground, knocking on doors type of thing. But in terms of, combing all of the listings, in looking at the information they had, and the fees that they would charge, when we break that down on what we average, the numbers that we might expect would come to register, it would be working out to pay for itself. And that's why I also did recommend that until, if we did get into this, that it would be something until we get a first year in to see if that bears truth in terms of the numbers that step up to register, that we would review those fees at the end of a year to see if that would need to be increased. But the fees that were put in there were intended to be ones that would be a cost recovery approach.
Laurie, do you see the enforcement end of it, not the parking, whatever, but people register and they follow the rules, but as we know, there's going to be many that are not going to register. And so then Keith finds out that Brian is renting his house 2 weeks a year. So are we going to act on a complaint basis like we do with property standards basis? Do you see how that would work? Or how are we going to enforce the people that don't sign up?
Yeah, so that's where, again, one of the services built in, if we do go with one of these services like Granicus, is what they also look for is what's been listed, and then we would have that to compare against our list of who's registered to say, okay, that one is one that to send a letter that you need, so you're aware you need to register. The other thing is there is a movement afoot as well. Up to this point, the platform that was the most cooperative was Airbnb in terms of also collecting where there were municipal accommodation tax requirements and things like that. But they're kind of also pushing back, saying it needs to be a level playing field, that something forces, like VRBO and those other groups to also do that collection. So the province does have a working group as well. Federally, there's also been some things in the news in the last few weeks about reinforcing when municipalities are putting rules in place, that these platforms also need to ensure that anybody who's listing is complying with those municipal requirements for registration and such. So I think as this is, again, as I say, it is a national or even North American issue, that the other partners in this are the platforms. So if some of those platforms start saying that you can't list unless you're registered with your municipality, if they have a bylaw in place, then that will also, help address that if some people really want to get their listings farther afield, knowing people look at Airbnb and VRBO or whatever first, that may be the other, again, enticement, that if they don't register with us, they're not going to get a listing.
I know when we had the discussion before, we talked about who regulates or who confirms what your property is, whether you call it a 4-bedroom, but really it's only a 2-bedroom or whatever. I forget, who regulates those rules, or is there someone out there that regulates it?
I mean, right now, in terms of, when somebody gets a building permit, then that will specify, how many bedrooms are in a house. As we all know, often you might see a difference when a house comes up for sale, even with how it gets listed for how many bedrooms are in it versus how many bedrooms MPAC might indicate versus what the actual building permit is. So, when it comes down to it, it's a building, if you're coming back for a building permit review, it's what meets the building code for how many, bedrooms are actually legal bedrooms in any kind of establishment.
Okay. So it's Keith.
Just one other question. With Grantis, do we have any idea how many properties they may have, or would they tell us initially? Do they have a minimum number of properties prior to engaging in some sort of a contract with them?
So they basically have, they provide prices based on the range of rentals that they typically would see. So when they did a scan based on, again, a snapshot in time, they gave us an estimate of basically what they would provide for a price for a year. So we have that, and it does, the bigger you are, the price, does scale up. So we would be in certainly the lower end of the category. And again, it's always, what they're scanning at a snapshot in time. As I said, anecdotally, some of the information, from the survey even indicated that there were about 35. So, that's something that we can also factor in, kind of a judgment of when we do our numbers at somewhere in that range, that's potentially what we have to start out with.
So if we have 35 that we know, we probably have 70 or more. How many complaints does the municipality receive, do you know?
Well, we do have, how do I put it? We do get reports. Right now, we're getting more emails in terms of that they would maybe non-compliant with the zoning because they're being reported that there's listings, or we know that there's people there, and that type of perspective. From the other perspective, I'm not sure that we have a full gleaning of like when, if there was a complaint about burning, like is it the person who owns the place that's got the campfire at the wrong time? So that one, we don't have that. We don't have a strict pull on that, but.
Like, are we talking 10 calls we received, 20 calls, like ballpark?
Oh, well, since we've had, just prior to when we had the site-specific zoning bylaw amendment put forward, I would say I've have about 20 emails. Again, but it's also because it is in the 4, and it's mostly, finding listings or indicating that there have been uses.
So council has to decide down the road when we get everything in front of us, 20 homes out of 3,000 homes. Is it something that we're going to spend money on to control? Or do we just get ready and sit back and see where it grows?
Cost recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. Keith?
I think it'd be wise to have different times of the year that count in time, so that we would know that it's not just summer, but it's year-round, or it's only a portion of the year. I think that'd be interesting as well, if they could do several counts and provide the information.
Okay, so council's wishes. Laurie, go ahead, you had another comment?
Yeah, and just as a side of that, as council considers that too, just I do also have, we have been holding a site-specific application in abeyance for zoning bylaw amendment that we do have to bring back to council for a decision as well too. So just, if there's a thought about how we can address that if there's a longer time frame yet to look at regulations.
Right?
And in the interim between them being here and now, has the place been rented?
So actually, during that time frame, the property owner has been undertaking renovations in order to address some of the issues that were brought forward based on the other listings. So there has actually been renovations been ongoing in conjunction with our building inspector. So it wouldn't have been in a state to have been rented.
Okay, so Laurie, you have enough information from council tonight to go back and do a little more background check?
Do you want to, I guess the question is, do you want to still, don't pass a motion, we'll just give you direction, I guess. It's probably the best way, I guess, at this point. Because, I mean, we're not ready for the bylaw yet,
No.
I guess, by any stretch, so.
Yep, so if
Yeah.
you want to create a new motion or just leave it off the table?
No, I think just, yeah.
I just give direction for now and
Direction.
take it off the table.
Yep.
You good
Okay.
with that?
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Laurie. Brian?
At what point does that other application have to be addressed, though?
So at this point in time, we are in the time where it's their right to be able to appeal because we haven't acted within the timeframe under the Planning Act where we're to make a decision.
So right now, they operate like all the other ones. Right? Because we have no bylaw against it.
No, the zoning bylaw doesn't permit it, so that's why they came forward to apply for a zoning bylaw amendment to allow for that as a site-specific amendment.
Okay, so that's A and B, right? No, I'm sorry, okay, so our next item is draft plan approval for Laurentian Meadows, extension.
Did you want me to proceed, or do you want to confirm if you're?
No, you're still not here.
Still not there? Okay.
Pardon? Oh. Well, maybe, I think, in this case, let's get through planning and we'll come back. Let's do that.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah,
so our next item is a request again from, as it's coming to that time of the year, for Laurentian Meadows with Burcom subdivision. They're once again requesting an extension of draft plan approval. So the county process does require that the township passed a resolution supporting their extension of it. And this is what's back before us now. This year, they have noted that they continue to investigate options to resolve some servicing issues to assist project viability. This was undertaken when they filed an application for the 3-acre addition and redline revisions to their adjacent development in Pembroke, and that they're now investigating a phased development with the adjacent Pembroke approved draft plans. And so I'm hopeful that means that something may still be moving forward, but I will be reaching back out to them again to fully understand what it is that they're proposing with the phasing, linking in with the sister subdivision that they're also moving towards final approval within the city of Pembroke.
Okay, any questions, Brian?
Every time these keep coming back, when it goes to the county charges them a fee each time they renew. We incur costs every time we extend it. Can we put some sort of a fee associated with extending these in place?
In this case, they're asking for extension. You're not doing anything, right? Basically.
Basically, what would happen each time that there's a request, we do review to ensure that we would be supportive of it. In this case, we are moving forward with it, but there are times where we may start to look at whether there's capacity, in the list. We had when this came up earlier this year, we had indicated though that we will be bringing as part of the review of the tariff of fees that's coming as part of budget discussions, that likely is that there will be a line item to have an opportunity to suggest that if council wishes to add that on. Because we do have to bring a report to council. Like, it does involve some staff time.
Okay. Sorry with that then? Okay. Got a motion?
Yeah, need a mover and seconder, please.
Jennifer and Keith?
Moved by Councillor Goche, second by Reeve Watt, that the council supports the request for an extension to draft plan approval from January 7, 2024 to January 7, 2025, and request the County of Renfrew to grant the application request and approve an extension to draft plan approval for subdivision file 47T 1400 Laurentian Meadows subdivision.
All in favor? Carried. Report on appraisal of cash in lieu of Parkland, Kirkland?
Okay, so we're very close to having final approval sorted for the Kirkland subdivision. And then one of the items there as well was the requirement for the cash in lieu of Parkland. So the appraisal had been completed and is done by Rivington. And based on the value, and again, it's the day before the receipt of draft plan approval that the vacant land is valued. This was a little bit more of a complicated property because there is an existing house on it, but that is kind of set aside and it's the value of the land as if it were vacant. And so in that determination, the value was set at $800,000. So that would result in a $40,000 payment for cash in lieu of parkland that would be forthcoming to the township.
My only question to that, Lori, would be that I know 20 homes is not enough for a park, but we do have other subdivisions within a close area, do we not? On Golf Course, off of Golf Course Road?
Yes, so at the time that the draft plan of subdivision was filed, there was a discussion before council with regard to the area that this, because it would be only 5% of the land area of this particular subdivision that could be required as the land dedication for this one. And so the council made that decision that the condition would be the cash in lieu. In terms of the abutting subdivision, Atwater, at that time, the council of the day there also determined that it was cash in lieu of parkland. However, with that adjacent subdivision, it does have a large area that is co-owned by the various property owners within that subdivision that they could use for their own,
Okay.
park in that particular respect.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Keith?
Under the Planning Act, what do we do with that money? What are we required to do with that money if we accept it, cash in lieu?
Yeah, so the Planning Act does set out that it's to be set into a special reserve fund, and it's for parkland or parkland improvement purposes. And our treasurer would have that information in terms of how that is directed for him to manage that type of reserve fund.
Yeah, it's legislated that we can only use it for parkland purposes.
So do we have a reserve fund now currently
And
for that?
and in this case, they're actually funded reserves, so it's put in a separate bank account by itself, generating its own interest. Now, I don't know if we have any outstanding now. I don't know if we've used it, maybe. I don't know if Sean knows that or not, but doesn't matter. I guess there wouldn't be very much there. I don't think we've had some in a while.
If I may, I believe our last one would have been the cash in lieu related to Taylor Heights subdivision, and I think at that time it was used, the funds were pretty much used towards one of the other improvement items that was going on recreation-wise at that time. So at least with this, we do have this amount coming, and there will be pending from Traxton subdivision and from Shaw subdivision, as we brought forward to council back in a report in July. So it will help give a bit of funds to offset some things coming up.
Okay. Motion,
Mover and seconder, please.
Wendy and Brian?
Moved by Councillor Hewitt, second by Councillor Ugly, that council accept the narrative appraisal dated October 2023, prepared by Rivington Commercial Appraisers for Kirkland Estate Subdivision, file number 47T 14005, to satisfy condition of draft plan approval for the subdivision.
All in favor? Carried. And the last item is just information, Laura?
Yes, the last item is information, but very happy information, that we do have the application for plan of subdivision filed by TMMM Pembroke, Inc., and it's for the lands behind the Walmart area abutting the city of Pembroke. So there is, through Zen City, is also used by the county for the online engagement, and so any member of the public can through the notice and going to that site, it has the reports. But the first phase would be looking at 156 residential units, including 55 single detached lots, 34 semi-detached, 34 townhouse, and 34 townhouse condominium units. So, we're very pleased to be looking forward to this moving forward. And I will be coming back fairly soon to council with a report related to recommendations for draft plan conditions.
That is exciting. We'll do everything possible to help them along as well. Okay, thanks, Larry. So,
Just do two subcommittees.
do the subcommittees, okay?
Yeah.
Pembroke Canary Airport, Alan's not here. Emergency management, anything?
No, but we will be undertaking our exercise and training very soon, so I'll be following back up with the
You
committee.
told me you were pretty excited about that.
I'm looking forward to it, yeah.
Well, absolutely, because we are doing something that was a suggested item that actually our CIO had some enthusiasm for, so I'm looking forward to this one being a more enjoyable
It's a surprise to me
event.
too.
Yes.
I don't know what it is.
Hunting accident?
Hunting accident.
Next week at the hunt camp?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thanks, Larry. Dean?
Okay, I believe Mr. Finnegan is here as well, so maybe, I don't know if we'll welcome Pat to the meeting. Thanks for appearing, Pat. I know you've done a lot of work on this, and council, it is a new council, so they're not too familiar with it. We do obviously have a little bit of a delegation time issue, but we'll ask you to go through as quickly as you can and provide this. I know you've appeared before city council and other municipalities, so certainly encourage. It's a great document, so maybe if you can give us the highlights of it, and then if council members have any questions, they can pose it to you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mayor Bennett and Reeve Watt, members of council. I do just want to go on record though, because you've been so patient with me and you waited so long. I logged in at 5:15, but there's a technical issue where I could see you and you couldn't see me. So I just didn't want you to think that I was also late for the meeting to present the plan that was late. First order of business was to acknowledge your incredible patience and just to say thank you. This is a little surreal for me to actually be here. Some of you may or may not know the story, but is my screen, am I able to share my screen at this point?
Yeah, you can.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, Halloween's over, but I'm just gonna get you to take a look at what I looked like a year ago in April. So that's stage 4 melanoma. It was also in my lungs, liver, kidneys, all up my spine, down my right leg and in my ankle, and I was told in April 22 not to expect to see the end of August 22. And it's such a miracle. The turnaround is so incredible. Actually, last week went with my oncologist to Kingston and presented to a bunch of doctors about this, and I showed them this slide, and I was trying to come up with something humorous, and they said, well, everybody says you've got to be grateful.
That didn't go well.
That's power, is that generator kicking on?
Are you still there? Did you lose the power?
Yeah.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
No,
We can hear you, can't see you, but
Yeah.
Oh,
Jeez.
right in the
Well,
middle.
you
right in the
got
middle of
quite the
punch
power
line.
going on now, Pat. You got quite the power. Well, and unfortunately, we couldn't see your slide to it. It didn't upload. I don't know what happened there, but it didn't upload to us, so we didn't get.
Okay, so you can't see that right now?
no, we're just
No,
gonna give it a
that's-
couple of minutes.
No, give us a second here. We'll see if we can,
No.
don't know
Well,
what.
it was a picture of a monster, really.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
what
I
it was-
figured that's what it was, yeah, but unfortunately, we didn't see that, but,
Mark's just checking the breakers, because it seems like a breaker trip, wasn't like a full power.
well, no, but the breaker wouldn't have tripped and turned back on. That's the issue, so.
We have the fire chief here checking it out.
So all I see now are the names of individuals. I no longer see the picture of.
You're
Oh,
coming
there,
back.
okay, oh.
Almost.
Yeah, we had you in there.
It was right in the middle of the punchline too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding, eh? John, while we're waiting, sorry I didn't get a chance, but just want to welcome you on behalf of council and We appreciate all the work that you've done for our municipality and the partners. So I just want to welcome you here tonight on behalf of council.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Pat.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Hey? Why would it reset itself? No, but I just mean it didn't break, it didn't trip the whole dark. You think it'd go dark? Sorry, Pat, give us a second here. We're getting close. We got you back on screen here now, so.
No worries.
Almost.
Eh? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that's a good point. Jeez.
That was on.
Just let me know if you want me to log back in, if you think that'll help.
No, I think you're good.
Picture for the next 5 years.
Jeez. Wow.
Wow.
That's
Good
quite
for
a
you.
battle you had for sure.
Yeah, 6 months later, that was all gone, and I'm now 14 months cancer-free.
Good for you.
But the recovery was almost as difficult, believe it or not, as the battle itself. And I'm just nursing a bit of a sore throat. Started a little bit sore this morning, quite sore tonight, but I'll just try to work through here. So I'll try to be really brief. So here's page 1 of the plan. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so cover page, obviously. I didn't want this document to be a long document initially. I was going to try and make it much shorter than most of the ones that are out there. And it's about average with a lot of the plans that are out there. But I wasn't able to do that without sort of shortchanging specific audiences. So what I've done, I'm just going to click on how to use this plan, is I've created 3 levels of engagement. And I kind of pet named them: the elevator pitch, the dentist office read, and the deep dive. So the elevator pitch is just a 1-page summary, which I'll click on now. So someone who's got 2 minutes wants to know, what is this all about, could read that. Someone who's in the dentist's office and they've got 15 minutes to kill could actually read this 8-page summary, and it goes into some pretty good depth. But someone who wants to join the advisory committee, someone who's like my daughter right now is actually in University at Ottawa, and she's writing an essay about the current opioid crisis in Renfrew County, and was using the plan as a bit of a basis for some of that background. So I wanted to create something that was responsive to whatever the interest level of the engager was. So here we are. What I'd like to move quickly to is the deep dive here. Let's look at the results of the lived experience survey. And so let's just talk about this in the context of the opiate crisis. So I sat in a police services board meeting last week, I believe it was, with Mayor Ron Gervais in Pembroke, and I've been reading a bit in the media about the issue. So this was the graphic representation, and just as a refresher, red means that the risk factor, drug addiction in this case, was scored as very high. Yellow for Laurentian Hills was scored as high, but not very high. You guys, Laurentian Valley, very high. And then green means not high at all, not a problem. So I'm just going to tab over to something as a quick summary here. I think I've got it right. Just a minute. No, not the PowerPoint slide. The other PDF. There we go. So that's just a snapshot of the plan. Risk factors can't be talked about in isolation. So when you hear in the media that the medical officer of health has declared a crisis in relation to the opioid crisis, drug abuse, etc., it's no surprise that poverty, mental health, drug addiction, and appropriate housing scored very, very high in most municipalities in the Upper Ottawa Valley. And you can't work on one of these without sort of working on the next. And so I'll just tab back over to the plan. I wasn't surprised by any of the results. In fact, those results line up pretty much with most municipalities across the province and across the country. As a matter of fact, mental health is probably the number one most common risk factor right across the country. So where do we go next? So the idea is, by the way, this lines up with the police data, the social services data, the situation table data. And so, people aren't wrong with respect to their instincts about, what it's like to live in a particular community. And that's what the lived experience survey was all about. So what do you do next? Well, what you do next is you identify your top priority, and then you develop an implementation strategy using a team of people who want to contribute and participate. But the advisory committee was adamant that before we did anything like that we first do some sort of an inventory to figure out what it is that's already in place. And so I'll just jump over to the programs and services inventory. IKEA doesn't order new bath towels without knowing how many they actually have in stock. And so rather than create, redundancy of human effort, I heard you talking earlier about the precious tax dollar, those are important things. And so it was agreed that we need to know what we're doing now. And one of my pet peeves as a former detachment commander was that there was no single document within a community that really profiled all of the programs and services that were available. There was an attempt done years ago in Lennox and Addington County when I was a detachment commander there, but it wasn't very comprehensive, and it was a paper document, and it wasn't electronically searchable. So my suggestion is that we do that inventory and then create what I'm calling the lighthouse document. So that'll simply be a companion document to the community safety wellbeing plan. So shortly you'll post the plan on your website, and beside it, once we've created it, will be this, and I haven't figured out what it's going to be in yet. I'm thinking something simple like Google Sheets, because it's free and accessible to anyone, anywhere, as long as they have an internet connection. No software is required on the user's computer. So once those two things are in place, then we sit down with the advisory committee and we go through the keep, drop, create exercise. What are we doing that we need to keep doing? What should we stop doing? And what do we need to create because of identified gaps? Now, there's nothing that prevents you from moving forward on what is clearly an issue, because let's be realistic. You didn't need the government to tell you to create a plan in order to have you start thinking about making your communities safer and more desirable places to live. You were doing that already, which is why the plan actually profiles a number of key initiatives that are already in place that are serving the community very, very well. And so that's what I'm working on next, is that lighthouse document. Mayor Gervais said, what do we do now? How does this work with the plan? Well, I had written him a fairly lengthy email saying, I think this is a public health lead, and you need to bring these partners together, and here's a problem-solving model that you can use. But before I sent that to him, I sent it to the acting detachment commander, Marianne McNeil, because I didn't want to offend her. And she sent me back a lovely email saying, we're already doing all of that. And, almost to the letter, what I had recommended. And so there's nothing that prevents the community from moving ahead. I don't want to see this plan change. So this will become a foundational document. And then every year we'll publish just simply an addendum, an update to it. So this becomes like a piece of legislation, and then the updates are almost like yearly regulations, if that makes sense. And I think that's the way to go, rather than, this is a pretty big document to keep trying to rip apart and update. And by the way, I've just sent out version 5. So this had been through many, many levels of proofreading. And which mayor was it? It was, I'm not going to do her justice here. It might have been Mayor Giardini. One of them had a very keen eye, and even though about 8 different people had looked at this, she still came up with some typographical problems that I had to address. And each time that I have to update it, this is done in a piece of software called Swift Publisher. It's desktop publishing. And then I convert it to a PDF, which is portable document file, so that everyone in the world could access it. But I then have to manually create this electronic table of contents. And so every time I update the document, I have to go through that process again, which kind of slows things down. And of course, over here we have municipal leaders. So where's Mr. Bennett? There's your message there. That's a really sort of quick overview, but I wanted to do it that way in case you had questions. I wanted to make sure that I left time for questions. And I'll just keep this open in case one of the questions requires me to go to some point in the document.
Pat, it's Dean. Could you maybe just for the sake of the committee, I know there's some new members and we haven't really discussed this a whole lot, if at all. Maybe just explain the whole concept behind the community safety and well-being plan, where it stemmed from. I know it was a legislative kind of thing we had to do, but also what the intent was going in, just so the council has an idea of what exactly they're looking at.
Okay, so I think it started with a lovely gentleman who I've become pretty good friends with, Dr. Hugh Russell, who spent about 40 years of his life as a researcher. He's got a PhD in, I'm not sure if it's social psychology or what, but in any event, he studied communities and how they work and what makes them safer, and in particular, the relationship between communities and police. And so Dr. Russell was hired as the advisor to the government on this, and provided them with all of the information that they published in what they call Book 3, their Community Safety and Wellbeing Guide. And I ended up working with Dr. Russell for over a year, designing a course at Loyalist College that we were offering to municipal leaders. And so the idea was you would send certain people from your municipality, we would train them on a 3-day course, then they'd go back and do what I did, which was, lead the development of the plan and the implementation of the plan. But what happened was the government turned around and then offered grant money to municipalities, and so most of them jumped at that and said, we're busy enough as it is, we're going to use the grant money and hire somebody else to do this. And so we ran the pilot, and then we never ran it again. And so the government decided to legislate this. There was a significant pushback from municipalities, particularly in Eastern Ontario. I know that there was a letter that was jointly signed saying, don't do this, we know what we're doing, and we don't need you to tell us how to do it. And by the way, you're not offering us any money or any help, you're just telling us that we need to do this. But they went ahead and they did it anyway. And I'm not so sure that it's such a bad thing. So the idea was that every municipality had to develop one of these plans, and the plan is simply focused on risk. So you start with risk. So think about a car accident. Police arrive at the car accident. They try to figure out what went wrong that potentially contributed to the accident, and then you work your way backwards. So if you decide that it was icy roads, then was there a heads up? Were they properly salted and sanded? If it's a bad intersection, is there something can be done? I'm thinking about in LNA, we had an intersection and I presented to council. Every time we had an accident, there was significant injuries. So it wasn't that there were the most accidents there, but when they did have them, they were significant. And I know eventually they put in a traffic circle and there hasn't been a single personal injury accident since. So that's an example of community safety well-being planning. You look at risk and you work your way backwards and you determine what are the risks, what populations are at risk, and then how do we mitigate or eliminate the risk, and you do that by countering with protective factors. And so I like to almost think of it as a curling match where, let's say that there's red rocks and black rocks, and the red rocks are the risk factors, and you're throwing black rocks, which are protective factors, into the circle and trying to knock them out of the circle so that they're no longer significant. I don't know if that helps.
No, that's great, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Any questions? Keith?
I'll just make a comment, Patrick, that I did read through your whole document, and I think it brought everything together in a much clearer picture for myself as to how the individual groups all relate with the high incidents. I just want to say thanks.
Yeah. So my intent was to draft something that was readable at multiple levels, and so I hope I've achieved that. I know I had one. They were all great, but there was one mayor, and I thought that mayor didn't know much about community safety planning based on the email correspondence, and then wrote just a fantastic leader's message. And so I contacted that mayor and said, great job, you know, like, where did that come from? And he said, I just read your plan. So I felt good at that point in time. I thought, okay, well, I've hit the mark. If the plan is informative enough to allow a leader to write a message like that, then I've achieved my goal. So what's happening next is I'm collecting all of the council resolutions, and I see you've passed yours, and I'll be sending those off this week to the ministry and then sending them a copy of the plan, and then you're compliant. And so the legislation really doesn't have any impact on you anymore, other than, you know, we're going to continue to work together, and I'll continue to work with you as a volunteer on any issues, and I'll help with anything that you'll have me help you with. Part of the deal I made with the big guys to get me out of this cancer mess, and I'll spend the rest of my days here trying to give something back. So I do intend to honor that.
Thanks very much, Pat. Again, as Keith said, it's a great document. I haven't had a chance to read through all of it yet, but what I have read has been very interesting. And so thank you very much on behalf of council for doing this project for us, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, so just remember, if you end up with a dentist appointment, there's a section just for you.
Thank you.
So we do have a motion, I guess, at this point to move it
Move on
forward.
a second,
into bylaw.
Wendy and Benny?
Moved by Councillor Hewitt, second by Councillor King, that Corporate Service and Protections Committee approve bylaw 2023 as being a bylaw, and forward bylaw, the bylaw should be forwarded to the bylaw portion of the section of November 21st, 2023, regular council meeting for passing.
All in favor? Again, now you have proof that we passed it.
All right, well, stay tuned, and if there's anything in the interim that I can help with, just please reach out.
Okay, thanks very much.
All right.
Have a good
Folks,
night.
thanks for your time. Bye-bye.
Okay, Sean, reserve and reserve fund val,
Thought you left.
go ahead.
I'll take it from here. There.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
So the first policy that is before you is just I'm asking or recommending an amendment to one of the financial policies that we have, which is reserve and reserve fund policy. First is to rename it from FIN 09 to FIN 17. It's just a housekeeping item. Somewhere along the way, we found that we had two FIN 09s. So this is the first time I'm looking at this policy. So this amendment will just make that change. But the main point of the report is to create a health and safety reserve. Kind of some important notes in the policy as it stands is council, which is you, shall approve transactions to and from the reserve and reserve funds. Council approval must be granted prior to the formation and dissolution of any reserve or reserve fund. And then myself as the treasurer shall develop and update this policy as necessary and present changes to you. So that's what I'm here tonight for. A new reserve fund must be included in the policy to be legitimate. So where this kind of stems from is in 2022, early 2022, WSIB issued a refund or a distribution back to Schedule I employers, which is what we are. Our portion was just shy of $17,000. Yeah, at that time, really nothing happened with that distribution. It kind of just sat in WSIB's on the statement as a credit. And what it was for was, I mean, they've cited a few different reasons why they gave us that money back or gave these employers the money back. But they in Ontario that year they gave a $1.2 billion distribution back, and they claim that's because of how efficient they were and different operational, financial, investment management decisions. But they also cited that COVID-19 had an effect on it, and I think what they were doing was they were probably sitting in a surplus. And as part of helping out employers, said, we'll give that some of that portion back. So that's where I think it came from. The amount was derived from either your 2019 or 2020 premiums, about 33% of those premiums, whichever was higher. So ours came from the 2019 premiums, and it's about just shy of 33% of those premiums. It's a little confusing, my last sentence of that page, but the 1.5 million, 1.581, that's actually insurable earnings, not our premiums. Our premiums were just shy of 50,000 that year, so that's kind of a housekeeping note as well. But in any event, So we have this $16,000, $17,000 that sits there. We continue to pay our premiums. So we inquire with the WSIB, we can pull that money back out. And at the same time, Deputy Clerk Lori Dennis enrolled us in the Health and Safety Excellence Program, where we received $6,000 this year. So now we're sitting with just shy of $23,000. So it's my recommendation. We'll have two options. One is to just leave it as is and then let it allocate in the year-end general surplus or deficit. And at that time, depending on where we were, I would seek council approval to put X amount into X reserve. Or option two is really what I'm recommending, is that we would create a health and safety reserve, and that's where this would go to, so that these funds would be allocated towards the township's health and safety program. It's more in line with the spirit of what those original premiums were for. And then it's definitely more in line for what Lori has done for us in getting us rebates, and we can put that towards in 2024 and 2025 and however long we go forward with it for training and making sure that we're compliant. I think it sends a really good message to staff. I mean, in the current strategic plan, so not the one we're updating, it supports manage potential risks wisely with good understanding of the long-term issues and forward planning, and ensures the municipal staff function as one team. So I think I believe it would be a wise recommendation. So really, I needed to bring the policy back to create it, and then at year end, because I'm not sure, we may have a few health and safety things we would use that money for. But at year end, I would seek your approval to put whatever's left of those funds into reserve. But at first, I had to create the reserve. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chair if there's any questions.
No, I don't have any questions. Anybody else? Wendy?
Not really a question, just more of a comment. I think it makes sense to create the health and safety reserve for all the reasons that you mentioned.
Brian?
I guess my question was, first of all, what kind of programs or things would it be used for? Is question one, and then I got to.
Okay, well, maybe I'll turn to Lori. Are you comfortable answering some of those questions? Sure.
You might need the microphone, I guess. I think it's unwired. No, I was talking to one at the podium, one just, or just come to the table and sit beside Sean.
So at the beginning of the year, I had looked into some information, some programs for training purposes. So there was a safety hub, they called it, with Safety Care, and they have a various health and safety programs or videos or shorts or of all different types of things, whether it's public works, whether it's administration, whether it's ergonomics. Like they have a bunch of different shorts on there, and we can also add our own health and safety. So if we have something that we would like to train staff on, whether it's a new piece of equipment or anything really, procedures even. So you can create your own training platform through that system as well, and it tracks everything and everyone who's completed the course as well. So it gives you that printout of everyone that's completed the course, when and how, and a certificate can be issued as well. That was one option that we looked into.
Stay there, Lori. I don't think you're done. Part two.
I guess, first of all, it's something that we want to encourage is that all staff, and that's certainly Dean's job at the top, is to instill that in all the staff, that they're always looking for savings wherever they can be, either whether it's one time or long term. My question is if you discover some savings for a way to reduce hydro expenses or heating expenses or whatever, that money doesn't necessarily go into a fund to be used for things like that. Health and safety is paramount, and certainly encouraged, and it should be paid for on its own merits. Doesn't necessarily need its own fund just for that purpose. That I think the money should go into the general fund and not be required. It's great that there was a savings there, but I don't think that it should be specific necessarily for that. If there is a program or some studying or whatever that can be done, yes, by all means, and that should come out of the general funds, but I don't know that we need a specific reserve just from that going forward. But
Okay, Patty?
is this going to be a continued, like, will there be always be money available to put in it, or is it just a one-time?
I would say that the main portion of this, of the main chunk of this fund, this money, this $17,000 is likely one time. So it's not likely something that's going to live on forever. Now, there would be still savings that we would receive rebates on through the excellence program that Lori has put us through or put us into. So, but that those would be, they're not going to be as big as though that's for $17,000.
Keith?
My first question is, the answer is to what you use it for. Sorry about that. The second thing is, for most other budgets or most other budget items, do we not just, if there's overages, whatever, we don't put it away, we leave it in the general fund and decide at the end of the year as to what the funds would be used for?
Yeah, I think the difference with this, or at least what I would see in the difference is these funds were meant for, they paid for safety premiums for employees. So the original intent of the funds was for insurance premiums basically on employees in case they got injured in the workplace. Then knowing we have a health and safety committee that's likely going to come in different times with recommendations for different upgrades and for anything. So it could be fees here or stuff throughout the building or stuff throughout the workplace. It's something that we've already taxed for, we've received the tax money for, spent, got returned, and then we'd be basically reinvesting it back into what the original intent was for. But certainly if the if it's council's wish to put it through, just bring it into revenue, have it offset, I mean, we could certainly do that, and then it would go into some reserve at some place somewhere. If we were in a surplus position, if we're in a deficit position, it would just, we'd be pulling money from other reserves, I guess, to cover less of a deficit at that point.
Jennifer?
I would say that we go with your recommendation, my opinion, and at the end of the year, if we decide different, if it's not being used or we need it somewhere else, then we move it.
So you said you're in favor to open up the account Sean's suggesting? Yep. Yeah, okay. Yeah, at the end of the day, we can do whatever we want with the reserves at the end of the year. We can transfer, take them out, put them in, whatever. So I would be interested to see how that account for a year works out and what money is gonna be spent against it. And then if we decide that there's not a whole lot of action there, we take it out. Wendy?
I'd actually like to make the motion to create the health and safety reserve.
Yep, seconder. Patty? Further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Oh, hold on. Say, all in favor? 4, okay, carried. Sorry, Brian was blocking you there, Wendy, so I couldn't see her. Okay, Sean, continue on property tax billing and collection.
Okay, so the second policy, this is the property tax billing and collection policy. So in, I believe it was in 2019, council adopted a policy, and it basically just rolled through how staff would go about billing and collecting property taxes. What I'm proposing to do is, and if I back up just a second, is the legislation changed. I think it changed in 2017, where you couldn't proceed on beginning the tax sale process on properties until the property was in 3 years in arrears. And then 2017, it changed to 2 years in arrears. From what I understand at that point in time, throughout this policy, is that council or the recommendation was to although they recognized that you could start that process in 2 years in arrears, it was the appetite of the day to work with people in 3 years in arrears. So it can kind of continue to go with the older legislation. However, in the policy, so regardless of if we go with how I'm going to recommend it, but there still needs to be some cleanup in the policy, because it kind of outlines in one of the sections the steps for personalized reminders approaching 2 years in arrears, but then underneath follows through the steps would be that when they're in 2+ arrears. So it's a little bit confusing reading it. However, I am recommending that that we would follow the Municipal Act timelines and would basically bump that process up 1 year, so that property taxes that were in 2 years in arrears, we could begin the process of potentially registering those attached certificate against those properties. So in 2024, that would mean, just using 2024 as an example, 2024 taxes would be current. Anyone that was in arrears for 2022 and previous, we could start that process. As current stands right now, the policy would be we would wait till they're for only properties in 2021 that had taxes owing from 2021 and before. So why I believe that it's important is as we collect cash flow, and it doesn't mean that we're going to have a bunch of properties we would register tax certificates against, but the letters are worded stronger. It is an education on we could do this and we follow, and it's just a year earlier, and typically it speeds the process up of receiving taxes. Currently, as it stands today, or well, when I wrote this report, there were 52 properties that were in the 2+ or the 2 years threshold, and there were 12 properties in the 3 years. So it seems that, you know, there's minimal properties that are in the 3 years. There's the majority are in that well, I shouldn't say the majority, but there's a larger amount that are in that 2+, and that is likely because some properties will wait until they're in that, I know I'm going to be in that 3, okay, I'll pay that down, now I'm out of it, I'm another year and move beyond. So that's the main changes to the policy. I did make another change, or recommending another change. It's just the date. So here they've, Laurentian Valley has had 2 kind of billings, capped and uncapped. Uncapped properties were mainly just residential. Capped properties were commercial, industrial, and the kind of long-standing tradition there was there was some, when the legislation in property taxation changed, capped properties were capped at the amount that their taxes could increase each year. And I think, and I wasn't around during a lot of this, but I think that it took a little bit longer to get the CD from Opta for the property tax information, and that's why that was delayed an extra month than the uncapped. But we don't have that issue anymore. All of it comes at one time, and it's all in a digital file. So basically, uncapped, I would recommend putting that we have all property taxes would have the same due dates, would be March and May, and then July and September, as opposed to March and May, July, September, August, and October, and all be split up. It's just a little bit easier administratively. So anyway, that's probably enough talking for me. I'll turn it back to the chair for any questions.
Questions? Keith?
On page 2, the first bullet, it reads, each month that a tax installment is not due, a reminder notice will be sent to each owner who has a property that has any tax arrears. Does that read right?
So what I'm trying to say there is we wouldn't send in, so for instance, in March, when we send out the interim tax bills, we wouldn't send an interim tax bill and send an arrears notice. And then when the property taxes would be due in May, so we'd send out the bill in March. It would show arrears. Then when that due date was due, we would send one out in April saying, here's where your property tax stands. The kind of a reminder. We wouldn't do that again in May, and then we would in June, not July. So basically we would stay up to date and keep people informed, which the township has done a good, it's not that this hasn't been done. I'm just trying to lay out the process because it is kind of confusing. But it would just keep it top of mind to ratepayers, and we wouldn't be double sending them things in the same month, basically.
Okay, thank you, now I understand.
Plus, it's a reminder that the interest probably shows on those
Right.
tax reminders.
Right.
Well, right?
Yes.
Sean, do you have a dollar amount of those 52 properties in arrears?
I do. Yeah, 300, just shy of 360,000 for those
Okay, I see
properties.
that there now at the bottom. Okay.
And total tax arrears is 1.4 million.
Yeah, that's a lot. I think 2 years is enough, and,
And-
waiting 3 years.
Sorry, and if I may, and I didn't mean to cut you off there, Mr. Mayor, but what I think a lot of bigger places are doing is I'm basically I would be waiting, or the township would be waiting until that 2 years came to say, okay, now we can register your property, and then it'd be 6 months later, if nothing happened after the June, we begin that process, which takes time. A lot of big places would do that in the year before, saying when the calendar flips to 2+ years, we're beginning that process. So we're still 6 months probably behind what we technically could, but I mean, we can only do, like, administratively, that would be tough on us in-house, so.
Okay. Anybody else? We have a motion?
I do.
Betty and Jennifer?
Moved by Councillor King, second by Councillor Gauthier, that the Corporate Services Committee recommend Council of the Township of Laurentian Valley approve amended policy FIN 11, property tax billing and collection policy.
All in favor? Carried? Continue, Sean?
All right, so while I looked at that policy, I thought, well, look at this one too. And not much to change here, other than, in the policy, it states that the township will transfer water arrears, water arrears to the tax roll. I think it said as of May 31st. I'm just simply, moving that up a month, to coincide with when we would be sending reminders type of thing. So we would move that up. We would be letting those people know that we moved, as of April 30th, if the waters weren't, or the water bills weren't paid, and then something would go, and then that next tax installment's due at the end of May. So it's just kind of better timing, I think. And yeah, that's really the only thing I was looking at changing, like adding in this policy.
Okay, questions, comments, motion? Keith and Brian?
Moved by Reeve Watt, second by Councillor Ugly, that the Corporate Services Committee recommended Council of the Township of Laurentian Valley to approve amended policy FIN 12, water billing and collection policy.
All in favor? Carried? Asset retirement?
Okay, so last policy for me, this is a brand new policy. It's a new requirement under our accounting standards, which is set by the Public Sector Accounting Board, and it's known as PS 3280. Asset retirement obligations are really a financial exercise that takes place if you know that you have a liability kind of in the future tied to an asset. So things that we would be dealing with at the municipal level would be buildings with asbestos, if we had underground fuel tanks, if you had a leasehold improvement, so you rented or leased a building, you did a bunch of improvements inside it, but part of that contractual obligation was you'd return it to its original state at the end of the lease, stuff like that. So the fiscal year, we get this right, this fiscal year, 2023, so when we close our books, we're required to have, be accounting for asset retirement obligations. So before we can account for them, we kind of need, specifically for the auditor's purposes, kind of a policy on how we would handle those. So that just lays out this, it's bringing council into the forefront of having some information on what it is. I do make mention in it that the only ones that really may pertain to us are the landfill post-closure costs. That used to have its own standard. It's already being accounted for. It's the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center accounts for on their books, and then the participating municipalities apportion it out. But that accounting is going to change, which will have a little bit of an effect on our financial statements. What's really important is it's not every liability that we would have. It only applies to assets that we have the legal or contractual obligation to permanently remove or dismantle, and for which we control. So it's not every obligation, but those are the two main tests. There's 3 ways that for implementation in the transition. The main difference really is that there's 2 retroactive accounting ways we can do it, and that would require a catch-up adjustment, and that would adjust our accumulated surplus deficit on our financial statements. So really, there'd be more work done for comparative figures before, but and probably a bit more challenging, I would say, but less of an effect, I think, on the actual financial statements. The prospective application is we don't worry about what happened in the past. We start now, and there's in the first year of implementation, there'd be a fairly significant journal entry that would happen. Now, what's important is it's not a financial, there's no cash, it's not cash based. it's going to change, it's going to add liabilities, it's going to add to our asset. There's going to be kind of similar to, you'll probably hear of amortization, how it's not there's no cash, but there's a transaction that occurs. We don't have to budget for it. It's a similar type exercise. But what it will do is it will impact our financial statements in the sense that there will be financial ratios impacted, and then users such as lenders or upper levels of government in that fiscal year, it may have an effect. But anyway, we'll deal with that piece of it kind of when we do year end, but this was just bringing together the policy on how we would account for it. And one of the things that we can tie into our asset management plan, some of the work we will propose in the budget is with building condition assessments, is actually when we have somebody go look at a building, we understand if there is asbestos in these buildings. I don't think we have many, but we'd be good to know if we do. Anyway, other than that, I've talked to our accountants. I've talked to Daniel at the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center. It's very similar to the county policy that they just passed. So that is what it is, and open to the floor for questions.
Have we looked at the building on 41?
That's the one that comes to mind as maybe being a concern. No, we haven't looked at it, but we know, we kind of have the luxury of, even though year end is a month away, our financial statements don't necessarily get passed until June. I think this year was June, because we have to wait on the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center. So it allows us a little bit of time early in the year to get some of that. So we will have to look at that building to see, and then really what will happen is if there's, let's say, asbestos in that building, we'll do a calculation on the square footage, basically the county has estimates on per square foot what it costs to remove. We'll determine if we have a legal obligation to remove it, which we probably do, and then we'll do a journal entry to.
And I'm not even sure if there's anything underground over there either, on 41. But it's our obligation. We have to check it out, right?
I think we would be very wise to check it out, and then we'd have to look at the actual legal obligations to dismantle them. I don't know the environmental impacts of them. It's likely that we would have some legal obligations, and we just have to estimate. And it paints, the whole point is it paints a picture for the people reading the financial statements. Laurentian Valley has that obligation X amount of years in the future to do that work.
But we don't have to do it right away.
You don't have to, no, you don't have to do it right away. Just whenever that
obligation.
whenever that dismantles and that's gone.
Okay, Brian?
The other property be the one on Brewham. Would be has there ever been a check or an audit for asbestos on the rec buildings and as well?
No, nothing current that I'm aware of. I know there was some early environmental assessment work done on the old Brewham Avenue garage years ago when there was thoughts of declaring it surplus, but with the vintage and ceiling tiles and what's in there, I'm sure there's going to be some small amounts in certain properties here and there, just based on a lot of what's in the township is, from the sort of 70s era when some of that product was still being used, right? So it's, something we'll have to check and be aware of.
Jennifer?
I'm type 2 and 3 certified, so as long as you are not disturbing the building, it can stay. As long as you don't like renovate it and gut it and stuff like that, it's probably all the houses in Laurentian Valley have them.
Okay, we have a motion. Wendy and Jennifer?
Moved by Councillor Hewitt, second by Councillor Gauthier, that the Corporate Services Committee recommend Council of the Township of Laurentian Valley approve policy FIN 18 Asset Retirement Obligation Policy.
All in favor? Okay, thanks, Sean. Dean, Corporate Services Protection.
Okay, so maybe, Laurie, do you want to go ahead? Sure. I mean, Laurie did most of the work. I'll let her do it. No sense in me stepping in now and getting in the road.
Okay, so before you is a report regarding establishing a property standards committee. We currently do not have one, and section 15, subsection 15.1 to 15.8 of the Building Code Act outlines rules, duties, rules, and powers of property standards as regulated by the Ontario Building Code Act. And the role of the Property Standards Committee is in subsection 15.3. Duty of committee, and prescribed that the committee shall hear an appeal. So up until this point, we've never had an order issued that's been appealed. So, but going forward, if there was ever an appeal, we would need a committee to hear that appeal. So the report is basically just giving some information about that in accordance with the Act, and that asking for direction to establish a Property Standards Committee to hear any possible appeals. So pursuant to, and then of course the bylaw that the Township of Laurentian Valley Council passed, bylaw 0010-063 back in 2000, is a bylaw prescribing the property standards. So it'd be in accordance with that, as well as the Act, to create a Property Standards Committee. And that's.
Yeah, and maybe I just add, I guess, and the reason this is kind of flagging now is that there has been an order placed on the property standards, and we're just anticipating that there could be an appeal, so we're just preparing ourselves for that. So what we're asking for tonight is for 3 members to sit on this committee. I don't think it's going to be onerous. I've been here 12 years and we haven't had one, so it's not really, we're just anticipating that we may get one. So having said that, we're looking for 3 members to sit on the committee, please.
Okay, so probably I should sit on it as mayor, and then Jennifer and Betty? Yeah, everybody?
Sorry, if it's somebody that, if you're gonna have your meetings during the day, if it makes it easier for 3 people that are willing, but if you don't have, I don't mind being that third.
Yeah, you make a point there. Anybody else? Brian, you're retired, you're not? Keith, you're okay? Okay,
What's
so
that?
Keith on this side of the table instead of Betty. Thanks, Betty.
So who?
So Keith and Jennifer?
Oh, Jennifer.
Not you and not you anymore?
Well, you put your arm out.
No, I thought I was one of them, I didn't.
No, Betty said she can't do it during the day, so.
Yeah, not during the day.
So who I got?
Me, Keith, and
Okay. Okay, so I
Is
need
there
a
a
mover and a
motion?
seconder, yeah, please.
Oh, Betty and Brian?
Moved by Councillor King, second by Councillor Ugly, that the Township of Laurentian Valley Council establish Property Standards Committee shall be comprised of Steve Bennett, Jennifer Gauthier, Keith Watt. Also that Deputy Clerk Laurie Dennis be appointed as Secretary of the Property Standards Committee.
All in favor? Carried. Keith?
Just a question, has this bylaw been updated at all, or does it need to be updated?
Well, the answer to your question is no, it hasn't been updated. Does it need to be updated? Yes, it has. So that'll probably be a 2024 goal of the clerk's department to get that sorted out.
Okay.
Okay, animal control.
I guess, well, as we were tasked a month or so ago, or maybe 2 months now, there was some concern of council members about the cat situation and the cost of controlling cats and monitoring and controlling them. Laurie did some digging to get some numbers with regards to that. And they're in the report, and I'll ask her to go through them. But again, these are numbers that are speculative in some ways, but they are close to what we anticipate being the savings, if savings or the reduction in animal control costs, if we so choose to adjust the cats. So maybe with that, I'll just turn it over to Laurie, and she can go through her numbers, and then we can circle back.
Thanks. Okay, so in this 3rd page of the report, there was a chart. The chart basically just gives an idea. First part of it shows what the OSPCA costs were that were related to cats only. So in 2021, there was 51 cats for a cost of $10,446.15. The total annual cost for that year for cats and dogs was $10,939. And then same thing with the next year, 2022, the costs for cats were $13,880 approximately, and then the annual cost for overall was $17,000. So and then again in 2023. The data only goes to September because that was the last reports that I've had. And it shows there that of the $15,468 annually that we've paid so far, 12,218 were cats. So that was an easier comparison to make. But when we got into the MLES bylaw enforcement, it was a little different. They bill by hours, and you have a minimum hours. So we determined that right now there's a minimum of 240 hours that we have contracted with MLES. So that can be anything, cats, dogs, any calls. So I tried to do a little bit of a breakdown there to show that in 2021, 157 calls were related to cats. And then you can see through that 47 were dogs, 33 were others. So overall, of the 237 calls to MLES, 157 of them were cats. The hours, on the other hand, is what's billed, not the number of cats. So of the 357 hours, 221 hours were cats. And then so forth in 2022, 437 hours total, and then 238.5 were cats. And then in 2023, year-to-date to September, of the 325 hours, 161 hours were cats. So there would be a marginal savings with MLES because you have to factor in the minimum calls. But we did talk to Jim McBain, and he did say that there would be a contract adjustment perhaps if we were to remove the cats from being in the bylaw, that there would be, the minimum hours would change a little bit from that. So the numbers there show what we've been spending on cats calls.
And I'll just as a preamble, these are based on the numbers. I know our OSPCA, or the housing of the animals, that contract is being will become renewed probably very shortly. I think it's June 2024. So there may be some changes in those numbers at that point. I don't anticipate they're going down, but anyway, just be prepared. Right now, OSPCA, and Lori has it in her report, but I'll just repeat it, that a dog, for instance, we're paying $325 for each dog taken in and $195 for each cat taken in. So if that number goes up, obviously the savings get larger. Anyway, that's the report. So you can, I guess the long and the short of it, when you summarize it, it's probably a $20,000 cost to the township to control cats. Then the question comes, if we remove it, does it remove in rural and urban centers, or are we doing half? And that gets a little trickier, but anyway, I'll just let it there for now and have a discussion, see where we're heading.
Betty?
I know this sounds terrible because I'm a counselor, but is a cat tag a requirement in our municipality, or just dogs?
I believe, maybe Sean, I don't think it's a requirement. I think it's if you want. I don't think.
Well, from the bylaw I looked at today, which is aged.
Yeah, it's aged, yeah.
I think it reads that, I don't have it in front of me here, but I'm pretty sure it reads that cats are the same as dogs, and the way it reads would be a requirement.
So if that's the case, would it not then be a requirement to have to look after, like bylaw-wise?
That brings up a good point. That brings up a good point. So if we're not going to control cats, then do we control the tagging? And that would be something we would look at. It's a good point. We'd have to think. We never considered that, so I don't know the answer to that question. So I know you don't have to tag any animals. I mean, that's a requirement to help you through the process. So if we're not controlling cats, do we still? The thought process, I guess, the thing with the tagging though is, if you can encourage tagging, then at least if the animal is found, then you can get it back to its original owner. Yeah. But you might want to, maybe we want to just put a minimal charge, or not even a charge at all for cat tag. I don't know.
What's the revenue brought in by cat tags? Do we know?
No, maybe Sean, okay.
We've, this year, 85 cats, so like 1,275.
Keith?
We're not the only municipality that has, I guess, high numbers. Bownshire Valley was in the leader this past week, showing that there's a problem out there with them. When you look at the $20,000, you can say, based on our population, it's $2 per head that that it's costing the ratepayer. On the other hand, the $20,000, it's just over a third of a 1% rate for property taxes, which could go towards roads, whatever. It's just interesting to look at it in that perspective. Are we banging our heads against a wall? Or cats seem to be a real problem in more in the rural areas, I would say, that than in the urban. I don't know, has Mr. McBain broke that down at all?
Well, I'm not gonna speak for him, but I can guarantee you, if you asked him, would he rather have the cats in or out, he would say out, because it's a big task. It's a difficult task, because there is, unfortunately, cats are, in a sense that when fall comes, people kind of seem to want to abandon, a lot of people want to abandon the cat and say, it's not mine. Well, he does a very good job to say, have you harbored the cat? Have you fed the cat? Were you petting the cat? Kind of thing, go through all that. And if people say yes to any of those questions, he says it's your cat, you need to control it, or you need to own it. So it causes a lot of work. I mean, is it being done? I think it's being done very well. But it's a big task, there's no doubt. But then, having said that, when you get into the urban thing, you don't get the same scenario. You're not getting litters, and we're bringing. Sometimes he's bringing, like, well, you've seen it in the reports, bringing 30 cats to OSPCA at a time, because there's kittens and everything else, and so it's now and then. To be fair, the OSPCA does a very good job of rehoming them too. So. I mean, their costs may be high, but they get them rehomed and very little euthanizing, so that's a good thing too as well, so.
Have we contacted SPCA to see, like, is it just our municipality, or is it other municipalities that, are they really, really busy, tied up with that number?
Well, I guess, Laurie, we did talk about, I don't know how many, do you know offhand remember how many are regulating cats? I know there are a couple, but it's not, majority do not, right? Am I correct?
I reached out to a handful of them, a handful of local ones around, and there was 4 out of the 8 that I had asked do regulate cats, and the other 4 do not. Some of them have more urban areas though, so they do, but the rural ones did not.
Patty?
Is there a way then that those lists or some place for, if we do take them off the table? I do know I've had a few elderly citizens, or residents in the rural area that have had several times cats just dropped off, that it ended up having litters. And, I mean, they're elderly, so they're beside themselves with what to do with these cats. They don't want to kill them, but if they feed them, heaven forbid. So, they get frustrated. They call the SPCA, they said, no, we're not going to take them unless you go through bylaw. But if there's some place that they don't want to kill them, but they want them to be looked after, they want them to be rehomed, they've tried the 24/7, they've tried everything. So what can we, or is there a way, or is there something that we can offset, if we take it off the table, that we can offer people that they can do with these stray cats, other than...
Unfortunately, I'm not, I
Exactly.
don't have the answer to that. I know OSPCA, you're right, correct, will not take them because they're paid by the municipality. I mean, I don't know if you show up at the, no, I know
No, they
they
won't.
won't take them. So what you're saying is there an organization where you say, I got this cat, I feel for this cat, I want to spend $40 or $20 to give you the cat, and you do whatever you want, try and rehome it. I don't know if there is a group like that. I mean, you hear of people doing it, some people on their own, but I don't know
Yeah,
if
you
there's
hear
an
of
organization.
rescues, but-
Yeah, rescues, I don't have the answer. That I don't know of any group that,
It's a
other
tough
than the
one.
OSPCA.
What happened in the city of Pembroke a couple of years back when they had all the feral cats on the riverbank?
Jennifer?
That's when the group existed still. I can't remember what they were called, but there was about 20 of them. And they set up the live traps down there, and then they brought them to people who wanted cats in their home. and we finally got rid of them all, and they just stopped the group.
I guess my concern is if we eliminate completely or if we only do rural, get rid of rural, what are we gonna do about folks like Betty Messens? There is a cost of doing business. I know it could be 20,000, but you gotta draw a line somewhere where what are we gonna do with some seniors or whoever that has a litter of 10 or 12? What are we encouraging?
That's my point.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, like I said, if it's your own cat and it has a litter of 10 and 12, that's not a municipal responsibility.
No, I
So
understand.
we technically, I mean, you can say it in a harsh way, we kind of walk away from them and say, you know what, we're not, it's your responsibility. And that's the difficulty, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's the old story, well, everybody says, and all due respect, everybody says, well, it was dropped off on my porch. Well, was it? So we have to do a little bit of an investigation on our own to say, yes, you're right. It seems like it was, and Jim is very good at that. I mean, he takes the benefit of the doubt on us, and if he has proof that you've been feeding and you've had it for a month, then it's your cat, and that's people don't like to hear that, but that's the way we can handle it.
And our current obligation with Jim is 2026? So
I think we just signed with Jim. He's a little bit longer. Yeah, it might be 26. I guess
Yeah,
that's
so
probably right.
They're not tied in with each other, so.
No, and Jim's very flexible. He was willing to,
No, I know.
like, he would, like, he's not saying, well, you're stuck into this. He did tell us that he would adjust his contract if we remove the cats.
What's council's wishes?
We can continue to monitor and see. I guess one thing we could do is, we're functioning on here, OSPCA is done in June. See what number comes back at us from OSPCA. If it comes to a big amount, then we may have to consider it again and say, now 20 is now 35 or something. I don't know what that is, but.
Wendy and then Betty.
I think we should wait until June, until that time comes to make a decision.
Betty?
That's exactly what I was gonna say. I'd say status quo till the contract comes up and see where we end up.
Brian?
For the first time in the last report, the cat number was down. So hopefully that's a trend.
Wintertime.
But maybe leave it until it comes up for renewal and see what.
Larry, I appreciate all the work you put into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Down to information, our fire chief. Gotta move him around. It's 2 hours.
Oh, he's good. Don't worry. He's all right. He's got nothing else to do. The mayor said you should have went first, just to get you out of here. But I mean, where else would you want to be?
Very true. Where else would I be?
Welcome, chief.
Thank you. Well, did you get the report?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's in their package, yeah.
It's a long one.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
busy.
it's, October was it was a crazy month, that's for sure, so. And this year's been busy. It's good, our calls are gonna be up this year, obviously, as you can see. I think we're over the yearly average already. We've got November and December to do yet, so.
Wow.
But, yeah.
I guess anything we want to flag, Tim? Is there any issues?
I don't think so. You'll notice the one there with the tanker that upset. We formed some dikes, and we contained all the fuel, and the fellow came in from Cornwall that was in charge of the cleanup and said, "You did a very good job at what you done. You did." He said, I'm really happy with what I seen. You did a great job." And we thought, well, that's good. We did a great job. Meanwhile, they've been digging the ditches and the things there for 3 weeks since the thing was over. So I don't know if we did a good job. I'm glad we didn't do a bad job, or they'd have dug up the whole field, I think. But, you get the MOE involved and so on and so forth. But anyway, that's what I couldn't believe. Anyway, a couple of things. Our new truck is coming on next Friday, apparently. Our tanker that we ordered 2 years ago is arriving. So it's a very exciting year for us because obviously our extrication equipment, excuse me, is just about ready, well, we're about ready. We have 6 more trainees this weekend, and then that'll mean everybody on the department is either certified or qualified except for 2 guys. So, and one of the guys that has been qualified or certified through us is a full-time firefighter, so that brings us down to 1 person, so puts us in good shape. So,
Well, I guess with the fire truck and the excavation equipment, your budget's gonna be pretty low next year.
well, I'll be eating hot dogs all next year, that's for sure.
Any questions of Tim? Wendy?
So your extrication equipment, you have people trained, so are you actually using it yet, or you're set to use it in the new year?
No, we're working on March 1st and taking over our area, okay? We've contacted, Dean and I have contacted Pembroke and Petawawa on when we're doing it, so, yeah, other than that, that's when it's all set to go in gear, so.
March 1st or January 1st?
March 1st.
March 1st.
March 1st, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Seems to be a lot more car accidents.
Well, one of the things that happened about 2 or 3 years ago is that they changed our thing that we respond, if an ambulance responds, we respond, okay? And they never had that before. It was always if it was bad, we called us. But now, so every time the ambulance goes to a car accident, we go too, all right? So.
Mandatory.
Pardon me?
Mandatory.
It's mandatory, yeah. So they send us and they send them, and it's kind of a windfall in a way because we charge it back to whoever the thing is. So, like our income this year will probably pay for our extrication equipment we receive.
Not gonna need any money in your budget.
I have it figured out.
So if an accident happens on, I was gonna say driving on, it's like Wilson Road.
Yeah.
Which is our road.
Yeah,
And the ambulance calls
Yeah.
you, and you have to go.
yeah.
The province pays. Or who?
No, the insurance company of the
The
person.
insurance company pays.
Of the person that was in that.
Province only pays on,
MTO.
yeah, MTO highways.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Keith?
I think with motor vehicle collisions, it's becoming more frightening that there's so many accidents along Highway 17, whether Whitewater Road is
Yeah.
pretty common, and on up the line.
Yeah.
Any particular reason, line of sight, any?
No, I don't really know, Keith, no, because they used to be all at 41 and 17, and as you've noticed, that's, touch wood, we've had less there, but there's now more at Whitewater and 17, and I don't know why, but it's just
I think people are in a hurry.
the traffic patterns are, you know,
Oh,
yeah.
fly.
The other thing that I've noticed this year, we've noticed in the last year and a half, most accidents or MVCs, the cars roll over, okay?
Jennifer?
Is locked door rescue still a thing?
No, we don't do locked door rescue anymore.
So
We
it's
quit
lo-
doing locked door rescue about 2 or 3 years ago because just due to the fact that most of the time we got canceled before, we get halfway there, we get there and we get canceled, so we just said that's enough, we're not doing that anymore.
So if we need that in Laurentian Valley, who goes? Pembroke?
No, nobody goes.
Nobody goes to the locked door?
No,
rescue?
well, the police go and do it anyway, so
Oh.
why have too many hands? They do it. And usually if you listen to them calls, we were involved in those calls for 5 or 6 years, and very seldom the door is not, you can't get in, so. But the OPP do have some stuff they can get in if they have to.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have one more thing to
Yes.
say. Smoke alarms. We advertise and we go on and on and on about smoke and CO alarms, and I've been doing some spot checks here and there on different places, and it just unearths me that people still have smoke alarms or CO alarms, that the batteries are not, there's no batteries in them. I was in a house the other day, and they had one smoke alarm, where they should have had a CO alarm and so on and so forth. And there was no battery in it, you know, and it just, and that's not, they're not, I see it over and over and over, and I think to myself, how much, and if, I don't know who's watching here tonight, but people, look at your smoke alarms, the CO alarms, and put some batteries in them and make sure they work. They're gonna save your life, you know, it irks me that people don't realize such a simple thing, but anyway, that's my sermon for tonight.
Yeah, it just kind of a thought process, you know, as we have done in the past at Christmas time on the radio, we always give a happy holiday kind of thing. What about getting the fire chief on there? Happy holidays, check your smoke alarm, and have you say it. I think
Well,
we've come a long way.
I usually do those commercials at Christmas time through, and it says from me or whatever, the fire department at the end of it, but I don't know, maybe if I'm speaking instead of somebody else, possible, but, yeah, it's just, we see it every day, and people just, they don't realize that that's gonna save their life.
Because we do try to do a campaign too on Fire Prevention Week too.
No,
I
I
think
know.
Oh, yeah,
that's
we do.
normally the time when it comes. I know the city
Yeah.
chief is good and Tim is good
Yeah.
too, so that kind of.
You do lots of,
Betty?
Just a question, Tim, if people or seniors or whatever, they don't have them, or they're not updated, or they can buy them, is there somebody, or is there someplace they can call to have somebody come put them in?
they can call us and we'll go and, I get, especially with people moving into this area in the last 2 or 3 years, I get people contact me and ask me to come and check their smoke alarms once they're moved in, okay? So one of the guys goes and we check them out and make sure and tell them everything, which is great, okay, that's fine. But, yeah, no, I mean, I don't want to open the door wide open, but, I mean, yeah, for seniors and stuff, we'll help them out, that's for sure.
Wendy, please.
Another great time to do some advertising, if you're going to do advertising, is 12 days before Christmas. Because through the fire marshal's office, they have a big campaign going on of safety, like with your Christmas lights and your smoke alarms, like all of that piece. So that's a great time before Christmas to do some advertising as well.
Okay. All right, thanks, Tim.
Okay, thank you.
So we have the animal control report, which I don't know. Sorry?
It's information, yeah.
Yeah. Email request for street signs, that's information as well.
I guess, Counselor, you got a request. I know Mark responded, I guess, and unfortunately, in this particular case, the person wanted some H's to identify the hospitals, where they were suggesting they were county roads, so there wasn't really an issue. But anyway, we're just putting it forward that we did pass along, Mark did pass along to the county. So whether something gets done at that point, but in this case, those intersections are under our jurisdiction.
Okay, Wendy?
And I will communicate that to the individual that put that forth as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, down subcommittees, Festival Hall.
We haven't had a meeting as yet, but I've heard on the radio all day today what a great event they had on the weekend for the Veterans fundraiser for the both Legions. It was well received, so they're now looking at making it possibly an annual event, but they're going to sit back and take stock of it. But
Good. Pembroke Library, Wendy.
So I know in the package, there's a whole bunch of meeting minutes in there. And so a little bit of confusion. I didn't have time to go through them all, but the library had gone ahead and sent them, but didn't realize that I have been attaching them for the last 6 months myself anyway. So you guys would have had all these minutes anyway before. So I just wanted to explain why you have so many meeting minutes in there.
That's okay. I know that we did get a letter, our contract for the library is up at the end of this year. Do we have a date yet, Dean?
No, we haven't. No, this hasn't.
The date has not been confirmed yet.
It's not yet, okay.
Yeah.
I can tell you that the request in the letter is public knowledge, right?
Well, it's a negotiated
Oh,
number.
negotiated?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
we'll just hold it.
Okay, we'll leave it for now. We will let you know once we know more information. Wendy?
I also just wanted to share on behalf of the library that Carthy worked towards accreditation for the city library because it was not accredited up to this point and successfully has done so. And so she doesn't have the formal paperwork. In January at the library conference for the province, she will get formal recognition as accredited library. And it's a pretty significant thing because she has spent a lot of months getting accredited.
Wow.
So
good for her.
it's fantastic.
I'll pass on our congratulations.
I will.
Okay, Public Works, Mark, please. So the first item is waste collection bylaw update.
Yes, good evening, everyone. So this is more just a piece of housekeeping. It's something that Lori and Dennis and I have gone through some bylaws where there's been amendments over the last 10 or 15 years, and it's getting trouble to sort of track the bylaws when there's been so many amendments done to them. So this really is more a piece of housekeeping. The current waste collection bylaw was passed in 2005, and over the last 18 years, we've found at least 12 amendments, which are changing rates, changed our bag collection from 4 to 3, changed some issues or some items with the white goods. So really, it's just some housekeeping to tidy up the bylaws remaining the same. And so it's just, like I said, a piece of housekeeping. The last amendment was in 2021, which did change our garbage rate to $210, and that rate did stay the same in 2022. And then with the Blue Box Transition Program, which we're transitioning in 2025, that'll probably, aside from the rate, be a probably substantial change to the entire bylaw. So just some housekeeping now, but sort of precluding to what will come in a few years when some of the items in here will be taken over by the province, and the municipality will essentially be doing garbage collection and organics, and the province will take over the recycling part. So all of the recycling part will come out of this as it's being handled with the province.
Brian?
Who does enforcement on all these fines that we have listed?
So that would be our bylaw enforcement if we had anything that comes up. So Claus used to issue some notices in that previously, but aside from the, I'll say, large item collection that's out too soon or things that weren't acceptable being left out, we're pretty lucky we don't have a lot of concerns or things that we can address with a phone call to the resident.
I was wondering when the last one was, because if you go down the list, I think a lot of residents would be surprised that some of the items that are listed here is illegal,
Yes.
and the price attached to the fines for having done that. And it's a question of, any day you could drive down any road and find
And see,
half a
yes.
dozen of these things, infractions being done. So do we need to do an education piece to let people know that these things aren't allowed and what it would cost them or could
Yeah.
cost them for it?
Yeah, and we can look into that. So on Thursday, we're meeting with our waste management group, Pembroke and Petawawa. And we do have waste recoveries sitting in for a little bit to chat with us about some of the transitioning there. So we could maybe ask Elizabeth Graham, who does some social media or sort of some advertising and campaign work for us, that maybe we could look at that in the fines and kind of reminders of, the do's and don'ts of the collection contracts, because I know all three are quite similar.
But on the Waste Recovery's website, all that information is there as well, and it is publicized when the large item pickup is coming along, what's allowed, what's not allowed. It's in the papers, it's on their sites. It is advertised. People just don't want to pay. They want it out of their garage, off their property. That's why, how often do you see fridges, or not fridges, but toilets and sinks, like anything to do with construction is not allowed, but they continue to go out. People put stuff in cardboard boxes. Cardboard boxes are recyclable. They're not going to pick it up. It just, I hear you, Brian. Can always ask to do more, but people just don't listen or read.
Like, I just look at the one, on large item day, you see vehicles driving up and down the road scavenging. Well, it's a $500 fine.
Oh,
do
absolutely.
they realize that that's a big fine? And I don't think there's all that many people aware that, they might find a nice pick there that saves them $20, but if it's going to cost them a $500 fine, it's.
There's always a little bit of shopping that goes on at the end of the driveway from various people, and which is good because now it's not going to landfill. But we looked at how much steel the Waste Recovery Center was losing, because that's the first item that's gone by Saturday noon. before the collection even starts on Monday. But how do you monitor it? You know, we gotta get bylaw enforcement company out there to drive around our township all weekend and catch the guy. Exactly. You know, maybe one year it can be done, and maybe then people will get the picture. It's $500. My buddy got fined or whatever, and might slow that down. But again, you got to pay the staff to do it, right? Betty.
With snow removal coming up and plowing and that, I've noticed there's several driveways where there's still a bunch of stuff. There's one on Beeline, right by the highway, and a few others where there's still some large garbage debris sitting out against the road. Does somebody go by and talk to those people, or?
Yeah, so through Brett Miller with our bylaw enforcement, we have issued a few letters in the last couple of weeks, and the one, I know the one on Beeline has been removed now in the last couple of days. It is gone. So, yeah, we had a few that were sort of lingered around. Something that we had tried for a few years and got away from it through the pandemic was during the large item collection. We were working with Waste Recovery, where we were either hiring between our joint municipalities a sort of a term staff member to kind of go out before the collection and do some education with the residents. It was a door hanger. It's a, you know, hey, your stuff isn't sorted. It was out too early. You know, it's not acceptable. We got away from that, but that is something that we probably not for the fall collection. It's not as bad, but something that we want to look at bringing back for the 2024 collection in the spring. They're twice the material, and you know, people have that. It's nice weather. We want to get outside again. Want to clean the garage out, and there's far more waste that comes during that spring collection than the fall. The fall is usually pretty good.
Betty.
Is that something we could also add in the newsletter now that we have it?
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We'll leave that with you, Mark.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, anything else? So we have a motion, right?
Yeah, I do. Mover and seconder.
Wendy and Betty?
Moved by Councillor Hewitt, second by Councillor King, that the bylaw 2023-11-060 be brought forward to the bylaw section of the November 21st, 2023 regular council meeting for passing, and to repeal all current waste collection bylaws.
All in favor? Carried. Down to subcommittees. Waste Recovery Center, I have nothing to report. This will start a budget soon. Down to community development, we have Katie. Hi, Katie.
Hello. I can't see anybody since the video never came back on, so just as a heads up. Yeah, so before you have a report with information, we had our October newsletter and it provided some statistics there. So we're back on track with our open rate around hovering around 70%. I provided our top 3 clicks as well. Strategic directions. So we had a meeting with the steering committee with the synthesis of data, and we reviewed all the information and interpreted the data to date, with the next steps being an in-person stakeholder public engagement, which is set for November 22nd. So invitations have been sent out for that. It was included in our November newsletter as well. And the public is welcome to join, and it will be facilitated by our third-party consultant, the Delphi Group, once again. We had a Small Business Week event, which was a collaborative event with the town of Petawawa, the city of Pembroke, and Enterprise Renfrew County. It was really well attended with 25 workshop attendees learning and enhancing their digital marketing skills. So it was the first time that we did a Small Business Week themed event, and it was well received, and we're hoping to incorporate that year over year. And then I provided a few other activities for the month of October as well.
Thanks, Katie. Questions? Anybody? No? Okay. Doing a good job. Thanks, Katie. Okay, subcommittees, Friends of the Disabled. Wendy?
No reports.
Shady Nook.
Shady Nook met again last night. The new bleachers aren't in place, but hopefully that's going to happen next week. Get those changed over. Hockey is going to be starting on November 18th out of Beachburg, and it'll move to Shady Nook on January the 8th. So hockey's a go, and things are moving ahead.
Are they getting lots of bookings, Brian, for the rental?
Bookings have been pretty good, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Alice Fraser.
Summary of minutes of our last meeting are attached. There is another meeting next week where we're going to be looking at finding someone to do the Santa Claus kids' Christmas party, and start negotiations or start procedures for our Christmas carnival again.
Good. Forest Lee.
Nothing to report.
Pleasant View.
Nothing to report.
Stafford.
Nothing to report.
And the Four Seasons, well, we just finished 2 weekends of Halloween. First night was a little slow with the weather, but the next 3, apparently I was at the first 2, but I guess the last weekend, Mark, was kind of over the top.
Yeah, so we tried to count numbers on the second weekend, and we're figured about 1,500 on the Friday night, and we surpassed over 2,000 on the Saturday. So yeah, very busy, and again, it's the community support is crazy. I often say it's can't believe how many people enjoy and like Halloween, and that scare factor and what that is. So it's a neat thing to have for the community.
Mm-hmm. For sure. No, I think the community did a great job, and I know the second night I was there, I think I cooked 560 hot dogs, and I said, Mark, no more. It was fun. It was great to see the kids and have so much fun, and the improvements over last year. A lot of people commented on some of the changes, more lighting, more fixtures. Absolutely. Yeah, it's great. Keith, Fit and Feisty.
There's a meeting tomorrow, but unfortunately I'm heading to Toronto, so I'm not going to make it, but I will make the next one for sure.
Okay. Reeves report, County Council summary is there. Any questions for Keith? Go ahead, Keith.
I'll just say, from last meeting, there was a question as to the radar board on the trail, Algonquin Trail, and would we be allowed to access the information? Yes, but a written request would have to be made for that. And secondly, would photo radar be available for the trail? And the answer is typically the law says it's for community safety zones only, and specified highways. But through Roma or OGRA, the request could be made to see if that was going to be possible.
Is it not signed community safety zone going through, say, Burns Drive? There's a big sign there. It's called community, what does it say exactly? Or does it just say quiet area, 20 kilometers?
Well, there's something about 20 kilometers, I don't know.
Yeah.
Typically school areas and things like that, as far as the safety zone goes.
Okay.
Entire community. I guess.
So maybe we can send a letter to get that report, Dean?
I mean, I don't know, is that something you can grasp, or do we have to send a letter? Is that what they're suggesting?
Probably be best, yes.
Brian?
So can we request to the county to have that area made a community safety zone?
But we'd have to pick more than just Burns Drive.
But that would be that stretch through there that we've had the issues with, because that would mean fines are doubled in a community safety zone, so.
I guess the concern though is, I mean, what's it gonna do any different than now? I mean, it's pretty strict right now of 20 kilometers, and it's being enforced, and there's a radar board and everything else. I don't know what another, I mean, we could get another sign put up, I guess in the end, that's what it's gonna be, but I don't know what other enforcement.
It doubles the fines.
Oh, okay, maybe that's an issue.
Well, then you do the photo radar, if it's a community safety zone, right? That's what we're saying.
Oh, it won't take photo, it'll be photo radar, like an officer standing there for speed. It's not gonna be photo radar like bikes coming through there or skidoos, they'll never catch those.
No, okay.
No, it's not that kind of photo radar, if that's what we're talking about. We're talking about speed radar, they could do that, but, so I'm not sure.
All depends on the definition of community safety zone as well.
Yeah, I know.
So why don't we find that out? Who designates that, the county? No.
No, I can check with one of the directors.
Okay. All right, you get back to us. I'm sorry? Betty, you had your hand up? I forget what it was. Sorry. I will say, since we're talking about the trail for a minute, I did get informed that the longtime hedge was put up along Burns Drive. It doesn't go right to the first road, but it does start at Dairy Road. It's about, I'd say close, probably 4 feet high, but it doesn't sit right in the trail. It sits a little bit below the trail. But there was I would guess probably $50,000 spent. There was a company that came up, put it up in one day. They said that they will grow a foot a year for the first few years and thicken up. And some of the taxpayers were down there when I did drive by, and they were very impressed. So county's trying that way, for sure. It was a long time promise of about 3 years, so it did come. Betty?
I remembered. So you were saying the photo radar board is there now, or has been there?
No, it's a speeding radar.
Or not photo, yeah, the
Yeah.
speed board.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that something that would help, like it does on Boundary Road or some of the other roads? If they left it there all year, would that help
It
control?
is there permanently.
It's permanently?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't been down there in that
Yeah.
area.
So we're gonna get the report from that. Okay,
Thank you.
yes, with a letter. Council comments?
Yeah.
Dean?
Well, I just wanted to make an announcement, I guess, on behalf, just a couple of staff changes and hirings, I guess. So, as we know, we separated the planning and recreation coordinator role into 2 roles, based on the recreation master plan. So one of them being the recreation coordinator was hired, and that is a Nevada sergeant who's been with us for several years, and she's going to take over that role. So she's begun that role. And then I'm happy to announce that under the planning technician, we did do a competition. We interviewed, the planner and I interviewed several people, and the successful candidate was a Laurentian Valley resident by the name of Angela Zebarth, who has had some, she was curator at the Champlain Trail Museum for many years, and then also worked for the city of Pembroke, and covering a maternity leave in a field similar to this. And at the end, she was doing some part-time work with the city, and she was successful, so she has joined our team. So we're looking forward to Angela being part of the team of Laurentian Valley. So I know she's only 2 days in. She did come back today, so it's always a good sign when you come back the second day. So far, so good. So that's our announcements.
It's good. Pass on, congratulations. Keith?
So with the Nevada's position then, in, I guess, together with the council liaison, so if there's issues, we go to Nevada then?
Yeah,
and
anything
have her
recreation-wise,
sort that
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
She will try, I mean, I think she has been attending some of the recreation associations. She will continue to do that. But also if you're getting some inquiries from either residents or committee members, then certainly pass them through. And it needs to be addressed by the township. It should go through Nevada.
Right, I know she's been very handy with the Fit and Feisty committee and, so.
Good. Brian?
Can she then also CC the council liaison for the committees when she is corresponding with the committees?
Okay. Mhm. Yeah. Good idea.
Anything else? Anybody? No? Oh, Wendy, Keith? Final answer.
I did have a few different emails come forth my way, and one particular one I've had from a couple of different residents with the same topic, and it was about the amount of lots you're allowed to sever. I guess you're only allowed 3, is that correct currently? And
Maybe Lori's the best one to answer, but yeah, 3 is, and you can go up to 5, but you have to do a little more significant studies.
Okay.
What do you mean, no? Lori?
Yes, so our current official plan, it's no more than 3 new lots as of January 18th, 1979. And then, but that's just one policy. So there are other policies that could preclude consent. So it's, if somebody has an inquiry, they should bring it forward through. And there have been some certain situations where there have been site-specific official plan amendments related to commercial to extend that. We will be reviewing the policy when we bring the official plan policies back, within the next few months, for discussion on that as well. Just one other caveat, I would say, in Allison Fraser, the date had been an earlier date. So once we when we put that date into our official plan, it actually opened up some additional from the past.
So I guess you did answer part of my question. So a couple of these people did cite to me that Petawawa and Whitewater region are now allowing up to 5. So they wondered if maybe we might be able to look at it.
Yeah, again, we will be bringing policies back for council to consider. At the end of the day, we do have to submit our official plan to the County of Renfrew for approval as well, so that will be also a consideration. And then one thing I do know that it also some with the additional consent criteria, it is subject to additional reports and other kind of criteria that they would have to meet in that. But it certainly is something that we will provide some options for council to consider very shortly.
Maybe I can just
Thank you.
add to that, because there are a growing number of municipalities that are moving to the 5 site specific. Of course, not every property is going to have the 5. They're going to, as Laurie said, you're going to meet certain criteria, but I think it's time that we kind of, take a good look at it. That's why Laurie's bringing it forward.
I can also add too, I think one of the things I'd like to see, and I mean, Laurie may not see it the same way, but I think we need to kind of get consent granted authority at our own level here. So that's something we'll probably, I would like to see us kind of move forward. I know it's another burden on the department, but in a case where we can control our own destiny, I think it's well worth it. And there are, at one time, the county was not allowing any of that, even discussion, but I know there's been lots now getting it, so I think it's probably time for us to do the same.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Okay. Keith?
So
Thanks, Laurie.
I guess my point I want to make is a request that we don't have any last minute changes to meeting agendas. Our last meeting, I found a little bit uncomfortable with the amount of information that was coming through on the request from the city at the time. I'm not saying that it would have made any difference had it been put off for another week. The city didn't even make a decision that night. Then they approached the county, and the county asked for more time too. But I guess that afternoon, it can be busy for people, and you don't necessarily get to review. I know that, and I mentioned to the mayor too, that he was at the meeting, and I think he did a good job presenting it to us, but still it was a lot to grasp. Like, I was trying to think, is it against our own procedure of grants? Do we need to make an exception for something like that? Just some misdirection that I wasn't really clear on. So I guess the request is, please, if Friday is a cutoff, and we talked about this last year or the last council, I think we should really try and concentrate on that.
Especially if there's a request for funds.
Okay, and I can comment. I mean, I will wear that. I mean, Steve and I were at the meeting, and it seemed to be, and you're right, in the sense of at the day there was an urgency at the meeting. We brought it forward. It was urgency around the table at the meeting that everybody was going to bring it forward and get stuff done. We went ahead and we got it done. They didn't. Okay, so that's one thing. But I guess for procedurally, you're correct. I mean, ultimately there is a process to add stuff to an agenda. So technically, and we haven't been doing that because we have a good council. It's a working council. And we do push stuff because it comes late and it goes to forward. But procedurally, what should happen, and I guess we will start to use that, makes it easier, that if at the day of the meeting, when we do our approval of the agenda, we would add it, but it has to pass on that agenda motion before it's added to the agenda. So then at least the council member can, as you're saying, and I know Councillor Ugly did phone the next day as well. He wasn't very enthused about it either. So it's kind of, at that point we can have that discussion and say, here's the issue. We think it should be brought forward, but it's up to council to decide, and the motion has to pass to add it or not add it, as opposed to us as staff just adding it and then all of a sudden it's there on Tuesday, get it right, and then the last day. But we will be very careful. We'll try if at all possible, but some things are urgent and need, and we'll use that process of adding it done. Instead of just adding it on Monday night or Tuesday, we will bring it only add it as council's wishes on that Tuesday at the part of the meeting, at the opening of the meeting.
I think, if we were to get something by 4:00 Monday, I think, and Dean would only do it if it's urgent, then that gives council that evening and the next day to look at it, rather than Friday, because as Dean says, we meet twice a month, and there are things that are gonna come from time to time that can't wait 2 more weeks, or sometimes 3 more weeks between council meetings. So if you got it the day before by 4 o'clock, I don't have an issue with that. If everybody else does, well then, we'll cut it back to Friday unless Dean wants to add it on Tuesday. But I'd rather see it come Monday night and have a chance to look at it than make a decision Tuesday before the meeting starts to allow it or not. So are you good enough with 4 o'clock the day before?
Well, I guess the issue, to be fair, some members are, some members probably plan to read it on the weekend, and Saturday morning is their time to read it, and you figure you've done all your homework by Saturday, or whatever the case is. So, yes, your point is well taken, but if you have a commitment on Monday and you can't read it, and I understand that you're kind of at it, and nobody's saying, we're getting you the pack. The package goes out by Friday afternoon, so we know you're getting it, and that should be the agenda. Now, if there's any items, I don't know, I mean, the process after that should be probably that agenda approval, and whether you add something or delete something for that matter, it should happen then. But if council is okay with it, I mean, we can continue to do it, as the mayor said. I don't have a problem putting it Monday, but maybe if the item is, I guess we'll have to use our judgment too, if the item is a little bit, if it's financially a big number and we're gonna do some homework, or if it's, controversial enough, maybe, if it's just a housekeeping, it's probably not a big deal. But if it's something else, we'll try to use our judgment and see if, but we'll do it on the side of caution, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Jennifer?
Well, I don't really feel that we can say, yes, it's gonna be in by Monday at 4, because if Monday at 5, there's an urgency, we're not gonna talk about it on Tuesday. Like, I mean, this is what we signed up for, this is our job. So when we get an urgency thing that we have to talk about, to me, we talk about it and get it over and done with. I mean, they could have tabled it as well, and not to be rude, but we all voted, and you guys voted, and nothing was tabled. So, I mean, we just kind of, it's not often that we get something like this, but we're talking about an urgency towards this situation as well, unfortunately.
So what's council wishes, Friday, or are you okay with Monday at 4, or, again, like I said, I'd rather see Monday at 4 than, like, if I read my package on the weekend, I take a few minutes Monday night to have a double check, to see everything's going on.
Monday at 4 is fine.
Monday at 4 is fine?
That's
Okay.
fine.
And and I know, Laurie, it's very good to give you an email saying we've updated the agenda, please check it again, so that's out there too, so you do get that too, so.
But the afternoon of the meeting,
Yeah,
it's a little bit much.
And even, to be fair though, that item, an item such as that, an unbudgeted item, of a situation that's urgent, maybe deserves, maybe put it on Monday, but here it is coming at you, but we're also gonna vote for it on Tuesday at the meeting, saying we're gonna add it or not. We're just letting you know that it's coming forward, and maybe that's another thing we can step with. We'll take a few steps and see how we go.
And I will comment on, because we did hear it at the meeting, the city did take their council the first time, the day after we did it, or the same day we did it. They turned it down because they couldn't provide enough information. They were looking at $100,000 contribution, and council didn't feel comfortable at 100,000 because they didn't know exactly what was involved. If I had come with 100, well, first of all, I wouldn't have come asking for 100,000, but I felt the urgency at the 20 grand. But I think if we do the 4 o'clock Monday, I think everybody be comfortable with that. Okay. Note made. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Sean.
Yeah, not probably the right time, but we got angels from the OPP for, I guess, every year staff, maybe council has, I don't know, it's my first year, but where you pick an angel and then the people buy gifts and then they bring them back. It's for, I think, the Bernadette McCann House might be the beneficiary of it, I think. Yeah. So anyway, if anyone's interested, speak with me. I have them, and that's it. That's all I have.
So for those that are not familiar, the Christmas angels, they're underprivileged people. In this case, it's not just kids anymore. There are kids and there are adults, and you're asked it, and they put down what they'd like, and you basically purchase the item, put it in some kind of bag, bring it here by the date, I think is December 1st, and then they pick them up and they distribute them to the particular persons, so. So I think we got 40-some this year, right? I mean, staff has been pretty good, we've gotten, but we didn't collect 40, but anyway, I think.
Okay, thanks.
I know they're in the community in different places, we're not the only one doing it, but it is a nice gesture.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. Keith and Wendy.
Moved by Reeve Watt, second by Counselor Hewitt, that the council committee meeting of November 7th, 2023 be adjourned at 8 PM.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you.